Ok. Vamos a empezar, buenos días y bienvenido, bienvenida, sí. Bueno, ¿cómo están? ¿Están bien?
Bien.
¿Están bien? Ok.
Bien.
Sí. Todo bien aquí. Everything good here. Todo bien. Bueno, hoy vamos a practicar con verbos. Wow, we're going to practice with the verbs. We're going to see what some of the responses were from the prompts, the little drills from last week. And we'll do some other kind of practice with verbs because verbs are a really, really core thing that kind of, oh man, goes on and on. But, you know, in a lot of languages, it does that, not just in Spanish. Quick reminder for everybody here and everybody who will be watching later that Scott wants me to remind everybody that if you're signing up for any classes whatsoever for winter starting, I think it's the second week in January. Yeah, registration for all of the classes, not just mine, but all the classes that Scottsdale offers registration for winter will start Monday, this coming Monday, the 28th. If you're a non-Scottsdale resident, on Tuesday, online. So if you're looking to do that, there you go. Bien. Okay. Y es todo? Sí, es todo. Okay, that's it. I had a bunch of things to remind different groups. So I'm looking at my checklist. Yes, that's the only thing I needed to remind this group. Okay. Bueno, vamos a practicar. Oh, yeah. IM verbs. We're going to practice with all three of those. We're also going to practice with the verb ir, just that to go verb. Okay. So that's going to be really our main big focus today, hoy, y vamos a empezar. We're going to begin with the infamous chart, the infamous chart. Here we go. AR verbs, and this, remember, is about regular verbs, although even irregular verbs borrow or benefit from some of this knowledge. They don't share all of it, but they share some of it. Regular verbs is what we're looking at. AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. Those are the three categories, just so that we get kind of our bearings straight before we really dive in. The AR ending, the ER ending, the IR ending tells you the verb is an infinitive, and that means to do something. To sleep, to walk, to spit, to clean, to cough, to sneeze, you know, whatever it is somebody does, they indicate an action. But they have a lot more forms than the English verb forms have. Yeah, if you say somebody sneezes, it's I sneeze, you sneeze, they sneeze. He or she sneezes. And that's the only difference. We've got two, count them, two great big forms. So when people are confronted with possibly 6 if you go to Spain, but if you stay in Latin America, only 5 verb forms, that is kind of intimidating. And it requires, while you're getting used to it, and it could take a year. You know, some mental gymnastics. Okay, so the chart is designed to help you, although what we want, just so that you know, para que sepan, wow, I'm not getting big in the right way, I'm getting little. Okay, aquí. Here it looks bigger. Okay, the chart helps you to see the patterns, okay, that all regular verbs will be. And you might say, how do I know a verb is regular? Well, right now you don't. Yeah, but, you know, eventually you will. And when you, because we're going to be graduating really quickly into watching some little videos that we'll watch where you'll hear the verb forms. And listening to these little storytelling videos helps a lot because what you're trying to do is to hone your listening skills so that you understand when they use the verbs in this chart. Oh, they're telling me who's doing that action. Whether it's a yo or a nosotros, or if they're asking tú, or talking about tú, you, the one human being, or if they're talking about one person or a group of people, plural, okay? So what we want you to do is not think sequentially with these charts. And by that, I mean, you don't want to have to go in order. You want to know, be able to pull out which ending we use for each verb. So this will start to become apparent when you get some videos, and you'll get one for homework this week. So I'm going to keep it light because of Thanksgiving week. You're listening for who's doing the action, and you suddenly know when you hear that verb, who's doing it, because it's all built in. All right. So right now you want to peg yo to the ending, tú to the ending, él or ella if it's a female person, or usted to that ending, nosotros to this ending. You don't need to worry about this one. This is the plural of tú, which they only use in Spain. Latin America will ignore this completely. And then ellos and or ellas or ustedes, you guys, plural, pairing with this. You want to get used to these patterns. And, the patterns are this. And by the way, these patterns are going to hold up even for irregular verbs to a certain extent. Okay. The patterns are going to hold up even in different tenses. So we're going to highlight these again. Oui, qué color, qué color. Quizás azul, maybe blue. Okay. What we want to look at, quizás no blue. Okay, no, azul no. Now we got blue in another one. Okay. We're going to pick out some different colors. Bien. What you want to be listening for is the consistency of these endings. All right. And that is, oops. Bien. Okay. Think of it this way, and this is the easy one. Everybody gets yo right. Everybody gets yo right. Verbs that talk about yo in present tense, mind you, only to talk about present. And an o. So yo ends in o. The verb ends in o. That o is not a masculine thing because verbs are not nouns, right? Nouns get o, masculine, but verbs that end in o, that doesn't indicate masculine at all. It just indicates I'm talking about myself doing the action. Okay, so that's the easy one that people don't mess up with. Whether you're looking at AR verbs or ER or IR, notice the consistency. S is the last letter if you're looking at a tu form, and that S sound at the end. But the vowel sound paired up with the S will depend on if it's an AR verb, as. AR verbs are obviously, after we get out of yo, borrow a lot from that ending, okay? And ER-IR verbs, which share in this particular case of tu, ER-IR verbs will get an E vowel, okay, with the S tagged on. So that's always going to mean we're asking you or talking about you, okay? Just the naked vowel hanging off the end, AR verbs, ER-IR verbs, A. That is going to be what we used to talk about one human being doing that action. And this, what they call third person category, whether it's singular, or plural, The third person is where we may actually include the pronoun or the name of the person or a full noun. In other words, we may not skip the subject. We may need to be specific because that third person ending could be talking about any one human being. We're picking from a big possible group of candidates for who's doing that action. Third person in the plural form, that N, the N, and all the tenses and n sound at the end is going to tell you more than one person doing the activity. But again, that vowel is going to dominate. AR verbs get the A paired up with the N. ER-IR verbs get the E paired up with the N, the N ending, okay? And then nosotros. Nosotros is the equivalent of somebody, y yo. Jose y yo is the same thing as nosotros. Usted y yo, you and I, same thing as nosotros. Any person, when I tag on an y yo, it means nosotros. And we have to have the verb reflect that. And all of those verbs that are nosotros verbs are going to get mos as an ending. So one of the videos I'm going to have you watch for this week, you're going to hear her flipping, using a lot of yo and nosotros, but she's going to flip back and forth. It's a little tutorial video. Okay. And she's going to flip back and forth between talking about what I do, yo, and then what we do, kind of talking collectively, like saying what we ladies do this. Okay. So you're going to hear a lot of o and mos verbs in that video. But again, the vowel we pair up with mos will tell you it's AR verb or it's an ER-IR verb. Ooh, this nosotros category is the interesting one. It is the one where ER and IR verbs are going to split off and do something different. Okay. And hemos will be the nosotros, the vowel for ER verbs, and hemos with an E from the IR will dominate for the IR verbs, okay? This pattern is going to hold true for all regular verbs, and some aspects of these charts will still hold true for certain aspects even of irregular verbs. Okay, bien? So the verb in Spanish tells the whole story. It tells you what the action is, it tells you who's doing it, and it tells you when. The when is the part that we call verb tenses. We're just looking at present tense. Presente. Presente, present tense tells you something is happening right now. Somebody is walking, or it might mean somebody does something habitually. Somebody, he does walk the dog every morning. Okay. And presente, the other fun thing it does is that we can use plain old presente to talk about near future. By near future, I mean what's coming up today, what's maybe coming up tomorrow. We would not use presente to talk about next year. That's going to need something that tells us more future, like way out there. Okay. But near future. Okay. Vamos a practicar con AR. We're going to practice with these AR verbs. AR verbs is the biggest of the three categories. Most verbs in the language fall into this category, bigger than the other two. Okay. Hablar, viajar, caminar, or andar, they are synonyms, kind of like we might say walk or stroll or saunter or, yeah, okay. Escuchar, comprar, llegar, usar, bailar, pagar, ayudar, estudiar, necesitar, trabajar, esperar. ¿Ok? Vale. And we did some examples. We're going to pick up with what the right conjugations will be for where we left off. Okay. So if we want to say escuchar, if we want to say my friend, ¿cuál es la forma? What's the form of the verb we need for mi amiga?
Escucha.
Escucha, sí, escucha. ¿Y qué indica? What does that mean if I say mi amiga escucha?
To
My friend
listen.
listens.
My friend, yeah,
And
my
listen.
friend listens, or it might mean, necesito mi teclado. I need my keyboard for Spanish here. Aquí. Or it might mean my friend is listening. So para que sepan, just so that you know, is listening has yet a different form than escucha, but we'll cover that later. That is something special. So escucha could be translated as my friend listens. My friend does listen every time I talk to her, right? A habit. Or my friend is listening. How do you know which of those three? Well, you kind of know from the context of the other information in the sentence. Ayudar, nosotros, la forma.
Haríamos.
Ayudamos.
Ayudamos, right. You're taking off your AR and ending on amos. Ayudamos. Y en inglés, what would that mean? We
Help.
help. We help, see? Or we are helping, we help. Or we are helping, we're helping, see? Bien, we do help. Okay. Esperar los turistas.
Esperan.
Esperan. Esperan. And we punch that you're going to notice we punch not the last syllable, but we stress or punch the second to last syllable with these verbs most of the time. Okay, unless you see an accent mark that is in a different place, you'll punch the second to last, not the last syllable, a little bit harder. Los turistas esperan. En inglés,
The tourists wait.
the tourists wait, or they are waiting. Bien, sí, igual. Bueno, caminar. Usted.
Caminar.
Camina.
Camina.
Camina. Sí, okay. And now, okay, so and it's good that you've got the ending, but notice it will not be camina, right? That issue of stress does become important. Camina. Camina. The second to the last gets a little more stress. Now, why is that important? Es importante. It is important because sometimes there are some verbs in Spanish where they might be spelled the same way, but if I punch a different syllable, it might, in some instances, change what that verb means. Okay? Bien. Okay. Usted camina, you do what?
You
Walk.
walk or you are walking.
You walk or you are walking, okay, or you do walk, bien. Trabajar, ustedes más personas. Trabajan, okay. Y fíjense, notice that we're punching this ba, yeah, trabajan, ¿sí? Camina, trabajan. En inglés, you guys.
They work or they are working.
Work or are working, sí, exacto. Bien, estudiar. And remember, when you have estudiar, we take off the AR and that little E sound from DI, the E, that stays there, okay? Yo
Estudio.
Yo estudio. Here is a syllable we punch. Estudio. And that means I
Study or I'm
study
studying.
or I am studying. Sí, exacto. Okay, so notice second from the last syllable, that's the vowel we stress a little more, right? Ayudamos, esperan, bien, sí, camina, trabaja, estudio, okay? I'm going to show you with estudio why that's important just with this one, because this is one that illustrates it. It's important to punch the U there, the second to last. Estudio, a little bit more, because there is a verb that does this, estudio. And notice that if you listen hard, estudio, estudió, estudio, talking about Joe, estudió, is spelled the same, but it punches a different syllable. Estudió means something different. It means he or she studied. So the stress matters. Okay, the stress matters. This doesn't happen with all the verb forms, but it happens with some. So making sure you're listening hard for that. It takes work to listen for this. If you think, wow, this is hard, well, it kind of is. See, okay. AR verbs. Is that the sí, es el fin. This is the end because we did a few of these together. Hay una pregunta. ¿Hay alguna pregunta? Is there any kind of question about these AR verbs? Okay. Okay. The important thing when you pronounce with these is going to be like the plague, avoid the schwa sound in English. The schwa sound is Avoid that as if it were the plague. Okay. Always make sure your vowels are super clear. You know, right? The a, the e, the I, o, u. Okay. When you make sure your vowels are clear and you avoid that English sound that we love, that we sprinkle everywhere in English, you will make sure you are understood. The vowels are 75% of the game in Spanish with pronunciation. Okay. Vamos a ver. Sí. Oh, sí, perdón.
Real quick on the caminar.
Sí, sí.
So when I first said it, right, you kind of corrected me. So what would that be similar to if I didn't say it correctly?
What would this be similar to?
Well, yeah, on caminar. So if I said caminar or camina.
Oh, caminar. Caminar does not have a different meaning, but it would just sound
weird.
Yeah, it would sound off. Would somebody understand you? I think so, but it would as I say in Spanish, suena rara, suena raro. It sounds weird. To their ears, it would sound weird. Okay. Camina, camina. Bien? Okay, so our point with that is to make sure that we are understood when we speak to somebody, as well as that you understand somebody else, right? And that vowel sound is what we punch. We don't really punch consonants. So you can say, take a notice, right? Escucha, second to last, right? That's what we, yeah. Llego, right? And this is another one. If I were to pronounce this as llegó, instead of llegó does have a different meaning. Llegó means he or she arrived in the past. It's not even talking about yo. It's talking about one person, but in the past, over and done with. So you always want to make sure you're stressing the syllable in present tense at second to last, unless you see, an accent mark somewhere. There are a few that do that, but not a whole lot. Okay. Viajas, right? Pagan, second to last is what we punch. This one's harder because, wow, look at all those syllables. Necesita. Yeah, there's your second to last syllable. Necesita. Okay? And then, wow, here, second to last is right the very first sound you hear. Uso. Okay. Uso, necesita, compramos, pagan, viajas, llego, ayudamos, esperan, camina, trabajan, estudio. ¿Bien? Ok.
Bien.
Bueno, otra pregunta. Any other question on these ARs? And you'll have to kind of, you'll dive in and get used to it as you go along. It's going to take a long time to kind of key your ear to and your brain to think about it. Bien? Okay.
Yeah.
Bueno. E-R-I-R. Okay, let's do a quick review of what of all our infinitives mean. Comer, leer, comprender, and I will show you later today what happens with this other word, which also means understand. This is an important one. And actually this entender is used more than comprender, but it gets a little different tweak in the middle that is not totally regular. Bien. Okay. Bueno, but we'll use comprender because it is regular. Comprender, vender, responder. And notice the infinitives, we always punch the end. We punch the end on the infinitive before it gets changed or conjugated, as we say. So, vender, responder, beber, vivir, abrir, escribir. Okay, vale, entienden, you get it. Bien. Okay, but again, we're going to punch that second to last syllable when we pronounce these, okay? So, yo bebo, I drink, or I am drinking, or I do drink something, okay? Tú, for vivir.
It is?
Vives.
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 Vives. Vives. And I'm going to underline what we punch a little bit louder. Vives. Y en inglés, ¿qué quiere decir? What does that mean, vives?
You live or you are living?
You live or you are living. Sí, bien, but it's talking to you in a friendly way. Sí. Bueno, usted, comprender. Usted
Comprende.
comprende. Usted comprende. 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 Here is what we punch. Usted comprende en inglés.
You understand?
Comprehend.
You understand. Sí, you understand. Sí, exacto. We don't say you are understanding. Oh, we might. Are you understanding this? You might, but not that often, right? Bueno, leer. Ustedes.
Len.
Leen. This is the one that some people struggle with. Ooh, what about that double E? Okay, that double E, some verbs do this. When we conjugate leer, to read, we take off the ER, but we still have that E hanging there with the stem, with the main part of the verb. It's a pretty short main part, isn't it? So when we've got a double E, there are some verbs that do that. We keep that first E, but the second one is the part that gets conjugated. So leen, and we just kind of drag that E sound out more. That's all, right?
Len.
Leen. In English, ¿qué es leen? You guys
You
You
read?
read, or you guys are reading. Bien, sí, okay, vale, bueno. Vivir. Nosotros
Vivimos.
Yeah.
vivimos.
Vivimos.
And the
Vivimos.
second to the last, that's what we punch a little bit harder. Vivimos, right? Vivimos. En inglés, vivimos
We live.
es we live. We are living. See? Bien. Okay, responder, to respond. Los estudiantes
Responde.
responden.
Again.
Responden. responden, ¿ok? Los estudiantes responden. En inglés es the students
Answer.
answer, respond. See, yeah, there's another verb that means to answer, but respond and answer are really just synonyms, aren't they? So yeah, the students answer, or let's put in respond, because that's, yeah, but it carries the same meaning. Are responding, okay, are answering, sí, es así, that's it. Okay, comer, tú,
Comes.
Comes.
comes,
Comes.
comes,
Comes.
tú comes, and this is a
Comes.
nice short verb, comes, 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 okay, comes, you
Eat.
eat,
Or
or
you're
you
eating.
are eating, bien, ¿sí? Bueno, a ver, entonces, leer, yo,
Leo.
leo,
No.
okay,
Leo.
leo, and there we don't have that double E thing, right? We've got the one E that hangs in it. Yo leo, I
Read.
read, or I am reading, bien, exacto. Vender, vender, to sell, ustedes
And then.
Then.
venden,
And then.
venden, venden,
Then.
venden, venden. There's the part we punch harder. Venden, venden.
Venden.
Second to last. Always second to last. You guys
Sell.
sell or are selling
Selling.
or do sell. Sí, bien. Abrir, to open, to open. Abrir. El turista
Abre.
Abrir.
abre, abre,
Abre.
abre. Abre. And wow, it's a nice short verb. So we punch the very
Ah.
first sound. Yeah, it's a short verb. Abre, abre. The tourist
Opens.
opens or is opening. Bien. Excelente. Comprender. Nosotros
Comprendemos.
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 Comprendemos. And here's what we punch a little bit harder. Comprendemos. Comprendemos. We
Understand.
understand. We do understand. See? Aprender, to learn. Irregular. Regular. El chico
Aprende.
aprende. Aprende. Aprende. Aprende. Prende. Prende. Here is what we punch a little harder. Second to last. El chico aprende. Al chico aprende. The boy
Learn.
Learns.
learns or
Is
is learning.
Learning.
Sí, bien. Fantástico. Escribir, yo.
Escribo.
Escribo. Escribo. Y
Escribo.
cri, cri, cri is what we punch a little bit harder. Un poquito más. Uy, momentito. Un poquito más. Cri, cri, cri. Escribo, escribo.
Escribo.
I
Right.
Right.
write. Or I am writing.
Writing.
Exacto. I write. I am writing. Okay, vale.
Early.
Sí.
Can we go back to, let me see, which one was it? Oh, abri, the tourist. Oh, abre.
Abre, sí.
It just sounds so odd to me. The tourist opens. I was so confused.
The form of the verb or when I would use it.
Yeah, how we're using it here. The tourist opens or
El
is.
turista abre su cartera. He opens his wallet.
Oh, okay.
Abre la puerta. He opens the door. Abre la ventana, opens the window. Abre su maleta, opens his suitcase. En la aduana, at the customs guy place. Yeah. Sí, eso es, sí.
Okay.
Yeah, I could have put in any human being. I just happened to put el turista. See?
Yeah, I was the same way. The tourist opens just kind of.
I'm like, I don't understand this.
I should put a different noun in there. See?
Okay.
I should put a different noun in there. Okay. I'll remember to do that. Gracias. Thank you. I'll put a
I spent
different
a lot
noun
of time
in
on
there.
that.
Yeah. El hombre. Sometimes you get tired of el hombre and chico.
Right.
What can I put in that everybody will recognize? Ooh, el turista. Yeah. What might a tourist open? His
Yeah.
wallet, his suitcase, the door. Yeah. Ok. A ver. Bueno, gracias. Ok. Bien. Vale. Vamos a ver. Did any of you take a look at this little story?
Yes, and I actually did do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah. If you have a question about it, I will take any question you had about it. Now, this is hard, although you do have a word bank. They give you a nice word bank. So they give you some other words that were not necessarily in your book. Like this one is muy útil. Wow, este verbo es muy útil. This verb is very useful. El verbo buscar es muy útil, is very useful. Buscar, to look for. And notice something about buscar. This is something a tourist might need. You walk into a store, I'm looking for a souvenir, right? I'm looking for, a cord to replace what got mashed up in your, what got lost, what you forgot and left at home, see? Busco una cuerda, otra cuerda. I'm looking for another kind of cord, connector cord. Busco un conector. I'm looking for a connector. Busco. I'm looking for busco. Okay? And notice the busco, the for is built into the verb.
Mhm.
You don't need the word for in this particular verb. Yeah. Esperar is exactly the same way. Wait for. The for is built in. That doesn't happen all the time, but it happens with those two verbs, buscar and esperar. The for is built in. So we just say busco, who's doing it, and then the thing I'm looking for. Busco, I'm looking for. Busco un libro. Busco un libro de español. Busco audífonos. Busco audífonos. I'm looking for headphones. See? Busco una pluma. Busco una pluma. I'm looking for a pen. Right? Bien. Algo así. So, buscar muy útil. Muy útil también cenar. To eat dinner. You don't need two words for that. It's all rolled into one. The dinner is in the CEN part, the cen, because la cena means dinner, the noun, dinner, but cenar is to eat dinner. Desayunar is to eat breakfast, that one meal. So notice we don't need two words. Yeah. Oh, people could say, I breakfast with my neighbors, but how often do you hear people saying that in English? Not a lot. Notice with escuchar, the to of listen to is again built in. Bien. Llamarse, you have this first day of class. Me llamo, you're just adding that little word me on the front end of it. Okay. Me on the front end of it. Me llamo. The me on the front end means myself. Me llamo, literally, I call myself. Okay. Llegar, you have had. Practicar es un cognado. There's a nice cognate. It means what it looks like to practice, right? Preparar, cognado, cognate, means what it looks like to prepare. Regresar, to return, okay? Not to return an item, a human being returning to a place, or a vehicle returning to a place. Por ejemplo, el autobús regresa a las 5. Al fin del tour. The bus returns at 5 at the end of the tour. El autobús regresa, okay? Or we can have a talk about a human being. I could ask you, ¿cuándo? When? ¿Cuándo regresas? When do you return? When do you return if you're coming back from an appointment? Sacar una nota is something you may not need since you're not a student, but yeah, there. Saludar, to greet. That means to say hello, to greet somebody. Muy importante. Wow. This verb, if I could put 5 stars next to it, I would do that. Tomar, to take. Okay. Tomar is used in a lot of situations. I'm going to give you an idea. Toman ustedes el libro. Toman ustedes. Toman ustedes el libro. Hey, you guys. Take the book. Toman ustedes el libro, no? Okay, so take isn't just you are grabbing something, right? This tomar, this use of tomar is kind of like we might say, I get, or I grab, or I take something, I take possession, okay? Tomar. Tomar, interestingly, is also used for this action.
Oh, taking a drink.
Instead of beber.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, tomar, you may hear more than beber. We put beber in there because it's an ER verb that's regular, so I can throw it in for practice, but tomar is used just as much as beber. Tomar can mean also, besides to take, it can mean to drink, it can also mean to eat. ¿Qué toma usted de desayuno? What do you have at breakfast time? Meaning, what do you eat? Okay. Might also mean, what do you drink? Depends on the context. Pero tomar. Tomar also can mean to take when you're talking about vehicles. Okay. Cuando estoy en Chicago, tomo un taxi. When I'm in
Chicago.
I take a taxi. Okay. This tomar is used all over Latin America to say you're taking a vehicle, you know, you're taking a plane, taking a cab, right? That you're eating or drinking something. How do you know which one of those it means? You know from the other words in the sentence. The reason I bring up tomar is that in Spain, I will caution you, if you are a person who says, quiero ir a Barcelona, I want to go to Barcelona. In Spain, they have a habit of using a different verb for take when they say take a bus. And that verb is coger. Coger means to grab the bus or to grab an item, like pick it up quick, okay? Don't ever use coger anywhere in Latin America. It's the big F-bomb.
Oh.
It's a big F-bomb. Spaniards who come to Latin America will naturally, because it's okay there, say, ¿Dónde cojo un autobús? Where do I get a bus? Where do I catch a bus? And it's the big, where do I, yeah, whoa, no.
Oh, wow.
And you know, yeah, so when Spaniards come to Latin America and say that, people are like, yeah, but I mean, they know they have that habit of using that verb, but yeah. So anytime you say, take a vehicle, this is what you want. Or grab an item. I got to grab this thing. Yeah, I got to take it. Voy a tomar, tomo las llaves. I'm taking the keys. That's the verb you want so that people don't give
So
you
in Spain, would they understand you if you use tomar?
yes, sí. Yeah. It's a thing, and Latin Americans tease, and tease is like, oh, you potty mouth people. But they're not potty mouth, because for them, it doesn't have, you know, that vulgar interpretation. But yeah. Languages are funny. Yeah. When you're separated by an ocean, as we are from the Brits, right? Different things happen with language for many years. Yeah. Trabajar, you have had. Usar, you have had. So tomar is used for lots of things. Para que sepan, so you know. Okay. Any little questions? And this is the nice thing, because all these little segments you get to, right? Check your work with the correct box. Did you have any questions about any particular item in there?
I had a question on the very last page, the last
Okay.
sentence.
Okay. Bueno.
My
Alexandra?
familia cenar.
Oh, sí, sí,
Uh,
sí. Mi familia would
yeah,
cenar.
because and my husband helped me out with this, but we were saying that it's not singular, so we put cenar, but the answer was cenamos, and we're like, but it's not.
Okay. You know, in one way, there might be a couple ways you could interpret
Okay.
this. Okay. Es posible. It is possible. So, textbook answer. Mi familia cena. My family eats dinner.
Right.
Cena singular. Familia singular. Certain nouns are, let us call them collective nouns. They have more than one person. So you would think, shouldn't that be cenan? Right? But it's one unit. Oh, these are unit nouns. Let's think of some other words that would do the same thing as la familia. Yeah. Mi familia cena a las 8 de la noche. My family eats at 8 at night. And by the way, that's a normal dinner time. That's actually even kind of an early dinner time in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries. Mi familia cena. Okay. It does need to be singular because how would I get the plural? Oh, mis familias would make sense. Las familias. I couldn't put me in there. Las familias cenan. The families all eat. Sí. Por ejemplo, durante la en Nochebuena, on Christmas Eve. Por ejemplo, for example, en Nochebuena, las familias cenan juntas. The families eat dinner together. Juntas, okay? Cenan makes sense because las familias cenan, I'm talking about all families. So then familias does get cenan. Las familias cenan. Bien? Okay. What other nouns might be collective nouns like that, but they're singular? El equipo, the team.
Okay.
La clase, the class. See? There are some nouns that, even though they talk about more than one, they are by themselves a singular noun. Now, somebody might could say this with the same sentence, but they'll probably pause. So listen to the difference. Mi familia cena a las 8. My family eats at 8. Versus, mi familia cenamos a las 8. Mi familia, slight pause, cenamos a las 8. My family, we eat at 8. Somebody could say that, okay? But then it's kind of like my family, comma, we eat at 8. So, es una manera de interpretar. That is a different way of maybe interpreting that idea. Bien? Okay? Okay.
Yes, I understand it now.
Okay, bien. Hay otra pregunta. Is there any other question?
No.
No. Okay.
The
I'm
only
gonna
one
point-
we struggled with.
Okay. I'm going to point out one word. It's not a verb, but I'm going to point this out because it's a fun and interesting thing. In English, you might hear somebody say, well, we don't use papa so much, except maybe if you're a little kid. Yeah. But this word, mi papa or el papa, actually, I'm going to take the mi out of it. Mi just means my. Papa, cuidado, careful. Here's one of those things where you see the accent, or if you hear somebody speaking, you will hear papa, papa, papa. And what do we punch harder? The second pa, right? Papa. Papa means dad instead of father. Padre, dad, but papa, father. Okay? Papa is not the same thing as papa. papa. In English, a person might say papa. En español, in Spanish, papa is a potato. Same word, same spelling, but papa, punch the first pa, potato. Papa, the human being, your dad, yeah, papa. So, yeah, listen for those little shifts in pronunciation. Son importantes, they are important. Okay. Vale, bueno, vamos a ver. I am going to, vamos a ver. We're going to do a little quiz together.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. No.
Terrified.
Está escrito. No. Bien. We'll do like the first 5 or so, and then I will leave the rest for you to do on your own. I'll give you the website for this. Well, maybe we'll do the first 10, actually. I think this will go kind of fast because there are only 2 of us today. Sí, okay. Vamos a ver. Let's see. Conversar is a cognate. It looks like converse. That's what it means.
Right.
Tú
Conversas.
conversas, an AS at the end. Tú conversas poco. Poco means very little or a little bit. Not little in size, but little bit. Tú conversas poco. If I hit the start, will it do the same thing here, or am I going to mess up? Oh, no, I'm not messing up. Okay. Conversas. So I'm going to do this so that you can also see. Tú conversas poco. Bien? Okay. Vale. Magnífico. Is there a next? Sí. Siguiente. Next. Sufrir, to suffer.
Sufrir es.
Yeah.
We take off the IR.
Yeah.
Sufres. Su is what you're going to punch. Sufres. Tú sufres de los nervios. You suffer from nerves, meaning you're kind of you're nervous about something. Sufres de los nervios. Sufres. Sí, bien. Vale. Siguiente. Next. Preparar. You prepare. Preparas una buena cena, sí, exacto. Bien. Vale. Ustedes. You guys live in California. Viven. Viven en California. Viven en California. Viven en California. Viven en California. Okay, vale. Siguiente. Maria's looking for Rosita all day long. All day long is todo el día. María? Busca Rosita. And notice when somebody says this at normal speed, you will not hear this itty-bitty word if they say at normal speed. It is there. Here's how it will sound at normal speed. María busca a Rosita todo el día. Okay? People will not, even though that little is a separate word, María busca a Rosita todo el día becomes María busca a Rosita. Because busca ends in an it's going to blend right into that word right? Spanish, and I'm pretty sure French does a lot of this as well. You know, a lot of those words get connected, even at a slow speed. María busca a Rosita. This little by the way, is called the personal, the personal It does not translate into English. When a human being receives the action of the verb, when it's a human being that receives the action. Rosita is receiving the action of the search. Yeah. Spanish has to have that little word a there. Normally, a means to, like in the direction of, not the number two, right? But in the direction of to. But here, that little a does not mean to. It just has to be used because we have a human being here. A Rosita. Maria busca a Rosita. She's looking for Rosita. Bien. Siguiente, siguiente. Rosa is, entrar is to enter, or we would say go in. Yeah. Rosa,
Entra.
entra,
Entra.
entra, entra. Rosa entra el edificio. She enters the building. Entra el edificio. Bien. Okay. Siguiente. Oh, Amanda y yo. Amanda and I, we're working in the hospital.
Trabajan. Trabajan.
I got y yo. Y yo. Trabaja normally would be okay for more than one person. But because that second person is an y yo, it means it kicks it into nosotros mode.
Oh.
Huh.
Trabajando.
Trabajamos. Okay.
Trabajando.
Amanda y yo is the same thing as saying nosotros.
Okay, Amanda and I.
Amanda and I. It is not just I. It
Right.
is Amanda and I. So it can't be trabajan, which is a normal plural. It's a special plural because yo is in the group. Okay, so trabajamos. Trabajamos en el hospital. Okay. Anytime you do any human being with y, yo, automatically it's the same thing as saying nosotros. And that verb will have to be a nosotros verb. Okay. Vale. Tú. You walk all day. Tú.
Entradas.
And
We have to take off the ar from the end first.
Andas.
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 Andas. Tú andas todo el
Andas.
día, right? And most people will drop the tú. The tú is written there only so that you know who to conjugate the verb form, right? A normal person usually won't insert that word tú. They'll just say andas cada día. You walk every day, okay? Andas, bien. Dos más, we'll do two more. Nosotras, that means it's a female we group. Mandar, mandar means to send, like ship off, put it in the mail, or give it to somebody to send it. Send, like send an email, or send a letter, or send a package. Nosotras, and we take off the ar from the end.
Mandamos.
Mandamos.
Oh,
Mandamos el libro por correo. Por correo means by the mail. Okay. Mandamos el libro por correo means we're sending the book via mail. Okay. We're not walking it over, we're mailing it. See? Mandamos el libro por correo. Okay. Un verbo más, one verb more. Mandar, send. You send. Muchos recuerdos, many regards.
Andas.
Mandas. Mandas.
Mandas.
Mandas. Tú mandas muchos recuerdos. Bien. Okay. Fantastico. And I'll send you that little site so that you can use other verbs, but you're absolutely getting the hang of that. Entienden? You guys understand. Okay, bien. And by the way, when I send you that site, it'll probably like prompt you with other stuff, just X out of the other little pop-ups. It has some annoying pop-ups, but it has some nice verbs in there for you to practice. Okay. Vale. What I am going to show you next is just a little caveat, a warning. No, a preview, a preview. It is not a warning, it is a preview. I'm going to remind you of something that probably blew right past you because there was just too much information. Yeah. TMI, too much information. When that happens, sometimes you might miss a detail, which actually, the reason I chose this video for you guys to watch back a ways was that this tidbit was actually kind of important. We're going to revisit one little verb because this one little verb is a verb you will hear people use a lot in Spanish. But this will give you the big principle, the big idea behind that verb that we're going to talk about. And the verb we're going to talk about is entender. Okay, entender is the same thing as comprender, to understand. Entender, to be honest with you, is more frequently used in Spanish than comprender. Because entender is the understand that people use to ask, hey, did you understand what I said to you? Or do you understand what I mean? You know, like they give you directions and then they say, do you get that? Do you get that? And they'll use this particular verb, but he's going to tell us the principle behind entender. Okay. And this is something that you probably missed.
About the chart. We'll put the blank chart back up here now. I want to teach you something about the chart. Now, on the chart, we have our singular side and our plural side. I'm going to teach you a little word that we're going to use to describe a part of the chart, and that is the boot.
The boot.
Now, later on, when we get to stem changing verbs, we're going to talk about the boot.
And yes, so the reason we're looking at this now is that stem changing verbs are a category of verbs in Spanish. And entender, which you will hear people use to say, do you get it? Yeah, is a stem changing verb. So we're going to think about entender after we listen to this. The boot is a thing. It's a thing you will start to hear later if you start to learn more verbs. It is a category of kind of irregular verbs, but those mos and o and as and an and en endings will still be the same, but he's going to show you something here.
Because stem changing verbs only change their stems in the boot, but that's
the stem changing verbs change their stem when they fall into the boot part of this chart. So I'm going to let him show you the boot.
That's a lesson down the road, okay? But I want you to know what the boot is right now because it's going to help us with IR verbs. The boot contains these three on the left. The boot is this.
So entender is going to get an internal in the middle of the verb vowel split if the form of entender falls within that boot. So if it's a yo verb of entender, if it's a tú form of entender, if it's an él or ella or usted form of entender, if it's an ellos or ellas or ustedes form of entender, that means entender, the ten part of entender will split off into not 10, but tien. Oh, kind of like tienes, tiene, tienen, kind of like that. Oh, actually, exactly like that. The vowel split will happen if the verb form falls into those human beings we talk about within the boot. If it's outside the boot, it'll look back to the original infinitive and will not change the form. And I'll show you that with entender in a minute. En un minuto.
And the one on the bottom right, that's the boot. And if you were to draw a line around it, it would kind of make the shape of a boot.
Yeah.
So that's why we call it the boot. But you go the three on the left and then the bottom right. That's the boot. Okay, so why am I telling you about the boot now when stem changing verbs is later on? Because here's the pattern of thinking. AR verbs, are o, as, a, amos, ais, an. ER verbs are exactly like ARs. We just changed the A to an E. Okay, so that helps us connect those together. Now, IR verbs are just like ER verb endings in the boot. the same
Yeah.
endings in the boot. So the
Okay.
O, S, E for IR verbs is exactly the same. And the en on the bottom right, exactly the same. So that's kind of a pattern to think. If you got ARs, you got ERs. If you have ERs, you have IRs because they're the same. in
Yeah,
the boot.
bien. So the reason he showed that, which was actually helpful, is that out of the boot is where the IR goes and does its own thing. The imos, the mos form, right? Or in vosotros, the is, which you don't have to know, okay? The imos, right, instead of hemos in nosotros is outside of the boot. Okay, so the reason I wanted to remind you of that is let's take a look at, because it is kind of important, that verb entender, because boy, as a tourist, you will hear that. I guarantee it. Okay. And I'm going to pull up a little screen to show that to you, and you'll see exactly what we mean by the boot, the magic boot. Entender, and we're going to entender. Entender. Okay, entender, to understand. And this verb is used more than comprender, to be very, very honest, but comprender is a nice, handy, regular verb, whereas this one is not. So here's what happens. We expect an O ending, right? But it's not entiendo. It is not entiendo. This vowel right here, it's next door to the ER, yeah? Instead of doing that, because it's in the boot, it'll do this. Entiendo.
Entiendo.
Entiendo. We're going to look at all the boot, the E, the E sound in entender, in the ten part, right? Splits into an IE. And this particular verb, you will hear way more than comprender. Entiendo, the same thing will happen with tú. Entiendes, right? Entiende. And if I talk about ellos or ellas or ustedes, the plural side of the boot, entienden. Ten becomes tien, the IE. Instead of just an E by itself, it splits off into a double vowel, but we pronounce them quickly together. Entiendo, entiendes, entiende, entienden. Okay?
Yeah.
So what's outside of the boot? What's outside of the boot is the nosotros. Okay? And nosotros will say, I'm not going to do what the boot does. Nosotros says, I'm going to keep this E by itself. I'm going to keep it the way it originally is, as you hear it in entender. So the nosotros form, it will do hemos like you expect. It'll be entendemos. Entendemos, right? And just so that you know it, in Spain, entendéis, whoop, perdón, it kicked me out of my Spanish keyboard. There, I got to put that back in. Entendéis, if you were in Spain, that would be the you guys, the plural of tú, okay? Entendéis, okay? So outside of the boot, no stem change, but yeah, IE, 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 weird. So here's why this is important. Here's what somebody will say. You ask for directions, see? ¿Cómo llego a? You ask this. ¿Cómo llego a? And you're going to name a place. That means, how do I get to? Because you're going to read that chapter now next week. How do I get to? And then you name the place. Por ejemplo, you want to take the metro, the subway. You know, you're in Buenos Aires, you're in Ciudad de Mexico, Mexico City, you want to take the subway. ¿Cómo llego? How is como. ¿Cómo llego? How do I arrive at? But we would say get to in English, right? ¿Cómo llego al metro? How do I get to the metro? Okay. How do I get to the metro? How do I get to the subway? And somebody might say, they might say, keep going straight. You get it? The you get it is going to become one of these two verbs, entiendes or entiende. Probably entiende because you're asking some stranger like from out of nowhere, right? You don't know him by his first name, so you're not going to call him by tú. If you were 20 years old talking to another 20-year-old, you would use tú. But when we become adults, we become more formal. Okay? An adult to another adult, you don't know, it'll be that one. ¿Cómo llegas al metro? And the guy might say to you, siga todo recto. ¿Entiendes? Oh, entiende, perdón. Entiende. Keep going straight. And then what he's literally saying is, do you understand? See? Do you understand? Entiende. So people will ask, entiende. And they will use this verb. They are not likely to say comprende. They'll say entiende. So I want you to be prepared for that one verb because it does that vowel split. This is kind of hard. You're using not just that e ending, but you got to change this to a ie, entiende, right? Entiende. Entiende. Okay. Vale? Okay. I want to bring up a couple quick things before we go to ir. Ooh, I'm going to have to move fast. This whole thing here is going to become something you're going to practice. We're going to go backwards a little bit next week. Your homework for next week is to go back a chapter or two. I think it's only one chapter. And you're going to go back to the around town thing where they talk about directions. And what I'm going to ask you to study is a little bit about the vocabulary of asking your way around. Asking your way around when you're lost, when you need directions. And also, really super important, interrogative words are in that chapter. Interrogatives means question words, because what we're going to start to do next week is to combine these verbs we've been using, combine them with a question word. So what are question words? They're words like who, what, when, where, why. Who, what, when, where, why, how much. Yeah. At what time? Okay. All those things are question words. So all that stuff is going to be in that chapter. It's going to be chapter 6. It's called Around Town. And it's going to use the verb llegar, this question of ¿Cómo llego a? How do I get to? Is going to be really, really key. But now you're going to know what that llego means. How do I get to? How do I arrive at? Yeah. And they're going to start to combine question words also in that chapter. So those are going to be the key components with that chapter. Also, you're going to get a quick, easy video on how to ask for directions, because directions are a thorny issue, because people may answer with a huge number of variations. So you're going to see an easy way that is foolproof for asking questions. Okay, let's go back a little bit. I want to show you how some of these verbs are going to come into play before we go to ir very quickly. Because ir is just one verb. I want to show you some ways that we will use these, or we can use these verbs to ask questions. Yeah. If you just want to ask a yes, no kind of question. Yeah. A question, you want to ask a question and you want a yes or a no for an answer, right? Is there a pharmacy nearby? Is Is the Westin Hotel nearby? Yes or no? Yeah, and then hopefully they embellish a little bit later on. Okay. When you want to ask a yes/no question, we're going to use these verbs you have already practiced a little bit, and we'll just change the intonation of our voice to make it sound like a question, much like you do in English. So, and even yes/no question, even with interrogative questions. And that interrogative again is question words. Yeah. So yeah. Like you need to get a pharmacy because you got a splitting headache and you didn't pack any Tylenol. Hay una farmacia. Hay una farmacia. Hay una farmacia. Down at the end. That's a statement of fact. But hay una farmacia? Is there a pharmacy? Your voice just goes up. Yeah. But notice what happens. The verb will come first in a yes/no question. Yeah. Oh, por ejemplo. Is the Westin Hotel nearby? Está cerca. Is it nearby? Cerca means nearby. Está cerca el Hotel Westin? Está cerca el Hotel Westin. The verb will flip out in front with a question. Oh, por ejemplo. You want to ask somebody because you don't know if they're working in the store or if they're another shopper like you are. Yeah? You ask, ¿Trabaja usted aquí? Do you work here? ¿Trabaja usted aquí? Do you work here? Because you got a question and you don't want to ask, Tom, Dick, or Harry. You don't want to bother the other customers. ¿Trabaja usted aquí? Do you work here? Okay. 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 So notice when we ask a question, our voice goes up at the end of the question, right? Our intonation goes up. ¿Trabaja usted aquí? ¿Está cerca el Hotel Westin? Yeah. Like it does in English. So that's not too hard, right? But notice in English, we have this flippy floppy hangnail word do, or sometimes that word winds up being the variation does. In English, do or does signals a question. Do you like this? Do you take this stop to get downtown? Yeah. Where do I find a taxi? That kind of do or does, it's an English thing to signal a question. We don't translate that idea of do. We don't translate the idea of does when we ask a question. Just so you know, okay? So quite often the verb is going to come up front when we have a question. I want you to be thinking about that, okay? Bien? Vale, okay. And you're going to learn some new question words in your new chapter. Bien, 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 bien. And of course, there's one thing I forgot to pull up. So I'm going to look for that now. We're going to take a look at ir. Ir. Just ir. To go. Ir es un verbo importante. Wow, this verb is like super, super important. But it's only one verb. And yet you're going to notice it follows some of the patterns we used with the other regular verbs, even though ir is not regular. Ir, to go. Like ser and like estar, it is very irregular. And that means ir, wow, it's an IR verb. Wow, if I take off the IR to conjugate it, I got nothing left. That's why it's so irregular, I think. Okay, but ir will not use those e. You would think, oh, ir, it's an IR verb. It should use those e sounds like s, n, Hemos, it will not, because it is irregular. But ir is a word that we need to use on a daily basis in any language. So we're going to learn how to use go. And we use ir for two reasons. We use it to indicate going to a place, a physical place, or to indicate future activity, as in going to work, going to read, going to, somebody is going to work, somebody is going to rest, somebody is going to listen to this, somebody is going to see this movie, going to do something. So that means indicating a future activity. It is not happening right now, but it will happen in the future. So ir has two purposes, and both can be important for tourists. So let's look at the forms of ir first. And ir, all of those forms, en presente, in present, they all start with be chica, the little be. And it sounds like a b, but a very soft be, right? It'll sound like a B, not a B. No teeth on the lip, okay? Voy, vas, va, él va, ella va, usted va, nosotros vamos, which people sometimes use that word vamos, let's go, yeah? Vais only for Spain, and ellos van, ellas van, ustedes van. And the little the little memory device our friend Senor Jordan gave us was, we go in a van, but we don't pronounce it like van, right? It's van. But we go in a van, yeah? They all start with be chica, right? Voy, vas, va, una persona, va, usted, ¿sí? Vamos, nosotros, or Amanda y yo, Juan y yo, usted y yo. They all get van, right? Or vamos, perdón, vamos. Ellos van, ellas van, ustedes van. Anytime a plural person and yo is not in the group, it's van, okay? Vale. So let's take a look at this. Voy a engrandecer. I need to make this bigger so it's easy for you to see on your screen. You must use a, which does literally mean to, T-O, to, after the form of ir, when you're talking about a place. Yeah, because, well, I'm going to work. I'm going to the plaza. I'm going to church. I'm going to the office. Okay, we have to use a. Okay, so you'll always hear voy or vas or va with a. Voy a casa. I'm going home. ¿A dónde vas? I'm going to show you what happens with a question word. ¿Dónde means where. Right. If I pair up the idea of where with a verb of motion, and ir is a verb of motion, go is a verb of motion, we need the a tagged onto the donde. ¿A dónde? ¿A dónde vas? ¿A dónde vas? Literally, to where are you going? ¿A dónde vas? Right? If somebody asks you in a polite way because you look lost and they're trying to help you, ¿A dónde va usted? Where are you going? ¿A dónde va usted? Okay. ¿Va usted a un restaurante? Are you going to a restaurant? And notice a yes, no question. Are you going to a restaurant? Either yes, you're going, or no, you're not going. The verb comes up front. ¿Va usted a un restaurante? Right? Okay. And you'll get this whole chart. I'll send it to you in the email, so you don't have to copy it. You must use a, and these are examples. Ejemplos. Okay. Talk about people. Wow. Oh, yeah. Talk about people. We're talking about people going to a place. Here are the plurals. Vamos a la farmacia. Plural, people. We're going. Vamos a la farmacia. Right? Vamos al metro. Are you going to the subway? That little word al is just a combination of a and the word el. Okay, so when you have the words a and el next to each other, they shorten down into what they call a contraction. A, when it's immediately next to el, shortens into the word al. That's why it's al metro. Okay, this is just a little something to remember. Van ustedes al metro. Van ustedes al metro. Okay, todos van al museo. Todos just means all, like everybody, all the people. Todos van, they're all going. Todos van al metro, they're all going to the museum. Okay. Voy a, vas a, or in the question, it had to move up front here. Va a, but plural, I'm talking about more than one person doing the action of going. Vamos a la farmacia, van al metro, van al museo. Bien, okay. So we're all talking about places there, yeah? And here we just show you how that a and el becomes al, right? That only happens if it's a and el next to each other, right? If it's a with los, they stay separate. If it's a with la, they stay separate. If it's a with las, they stay separate. But a and el, they squish together, big trash compactors. So you'll hear things like this. Voy a los parques, I'm going to the park. Oh, voy a los parques nacionales, I'm going to the national parks. Voy a los parques, I'm going to make this a little smaller so that I can fit that in. Voy a los parques nacionales. Bien. I'm going to the national parks, right? See? Voy a la oficina del médico. I'm going to the doctor's office. We don't have this apostrophe S thing in Spanish to show ownership. It has to be del médico. Voy a la oficina del médico. Vamos a las tiendas. We're going to the stores. But if it's a, el, it becomes al. Anita va al consultorio del médico. Anita is going to the doctor's office. Consultorio is sometimes used more rather than oficina for a professional like an accountant or a doctor. Yeah. Anita va al consultorio del médico. So all of these are places. Parque, oficina, tiendas, consultorio. Yeah. We need an a to say to and then that place. Okay. Vale. Bien. Now, here is another reason for using ir. This is where we're going to wrap up with. Ir can be used again with that little word a. Here, the a won't strictly speaking mean to. It just has to be there. Just you have to accept that. Blind faith. Because the comer already means to eat. The escuchar already means to listen to. But ir needs this little word a. They pair up together. They just do. Ir can be used to indicate the future, that someone is going to do something. Okay? You still have to use the a, but you'll have ir conjugated next to the little word a, and after that, the action that somebody is going to do. But that second verb, the action they're going to do, it's not conjugated. It stays as the infinitive. We do the same thing in English. I'm going to watch a show. We don't say, I'm going, I watch. Yeah. I'm going to read this article, not I'm going, I read this article. Yeah. So we don't do that in English. We're not going to do that in Spanish either. The second verb that actually tells the really important activity that you plan on doing soon, in the future, that stays unconjugated. But ir must be conjugated. So, voy a comer. I'm going to eat. Yeah. Vamos a escuchar. We're going to listen. Ellos van a tomar un taxi. You're going to take a taxi. See? Mi amigo va a coger, va a tomar. Van a tomar un taxi. Mi amigo va a pagar. Oh, mi amigo va a pagar. My friend is going to pay. And notice in this example, va a pagar, nobody is going to stop between each word. Even in English, we don't talk like this. Even in English, we don't talk like this. Yeah, okay. That va a pagar, the va a, they're going to drag right together because I got va ending in a and I've got the word a next to it. So it's just going to prolong or elongate that a sound a little bit. Mi amigo va a pagar. Va a pagar. My friend is going to pay. So ir has two purposes. Yeah, is actually talking about moving to a place. We need an end destination, or it's saying that somebody is going to do something. En el futuro, in the future. Yeah? Okay? Back here. We'll play a little more with ir next week. We'll have some questions with ir and how to answer them, and we'll play around with that a little bit. But I do want to make sure that, we're going to go backwards, chapter-wise, and we're going to look at how to get around places. So again, that is going to be chapter 6, around town. It is what it's called. Por la ciudad means around or through the town. And they're going to talk about, so your focus is going to be words to talk about directions, how to get to places, and interrogative words. Those are the two biggies, because we're going to use interrogative words, and those are actually maybe even a little more important because we're going to combine those with the verbs we've already used, because it is important to know how to ask a question. Yeah, when you got to get an answer. Now, the video I will send you tells you how to ask for directions. What does it say? It's either 4 or 5, 7 words. Very limited, less than 10 words. And it's like the down and dirty, how do you get around if you can't remember all the vocabulary in this chapter? You feel pressured. And then the person starts talking at you. Go down here, hang a left. After that, 2 more blocks, then you turn right. Oh my God. And right, you know what? I'm sorry. Sometimes in English, by the time they're done with that, I'm like, I hope I remember all of that. Yeah. And I might not, because I probably won't. They're going to show you this. This video is, I swear to God, hand to God, absolutely true. He's going to show you how people actually, they do a lot of body language to tell you how to get someplace. And it is the honest to God truth. And every time I have ever asked for directions in a Spanish-speaking country, that is the way people have done directions for me. So it is absolute truth. Please know that when you watch it. And it will help you a lot. Okay, so next week we're going to practice those interrogative words. We're going to build them in with the noun or the verbs you've already learned, and we'll do more with ir. Make sense? See? And I need to send you the audio for chapter 6, the audio clips for chapter 6. So chapter 6, the directions words that are going to be super, super helpful will be words like a la izquierda. I got to put a la izquierda, to the left. A la derecha, to the right. Right? Derecho or recto for straight. Yeah. So really basic directional words. Just so you know, You're not going to hear, like here in the States, a lot of people tend to use go north, go south, go east. I'm not going to say you'll never hear that, but not so much. It'll be more landmark oriented, you know, go 2 blocks. So you're going to need to know words like izquierda, left, derecha, right, recto or derecho for straight ahead. Words like cuadra, block. People will tell you how many blocks to go, or they'll tell you to pass a traffic light, semáforo. So words like that are landmark based, yeah, will be more important than north, south, east, west when you ask somebody directions. Okay, bien? Magnífico. ¿Alguna pregunta? Any questions before we sign off? Nada.
No, nada.
Nada. Ok, bien. Espero que ustedes tengan buen día de acción de gracias. Día de acción de gracias. Sí, eso es. Espero que tengan, I hope that you have, espero que tengan un día de acción de gracias fantástico. Ok, muy bien. Muchas gracias, muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Adiós.
Bien, y nos
Bien.
vemos, ¿sí?
Nos vemos.
Ok,
Bien.
bueno.